Hey everyone, Ryan here at etrailer. Today on our 2021 Ford Escape, we're going to be showing you how to install the Blue Ox base plate kit with removable arms. Before we do that though, let's just take a minute, check it out, and make sure it's going to work for you. Before we jump right in, I figured it'd be useful to address one of the big questions that a lot of people wonder when it comes to flat towing, and that's what parts am I going to need? There's going to be a total of 5 main components. You're going to have the base plate, which is going to provide us with an attachment point. That way we can hook our tow bar up to it. That's the second part. It's going to be the actual link that connects the front of your vehicle to the back of your coach. Third main part, you have safety cables, and those are just there in the event of an unlikely disconnect to keep everything paired together. And then you're going to have tow bar wiring. And what this will do is send the lighting functions from the back of your RV to the back of your Ford, keeping you safe and legal. And last but not least, the fifth main part will be a supplemental braking system. And what this will do is apply the brakes in your Escape whenever you hit the brakes in your motorhome, bringing you to a more predictable and safe stop. This is what your Escape can look like when you are all set up and connected to your motorhome. And I like it. Everything's easy to see, easy to get to. You know, it looks well organized. You take a quick look back here, you can make sure all your connections are made and everything like that. So can't really ask for too much more there. I do want to mention as well, so this base plate is designed to work with the hybrid models, with the exception of the plug-in hybrid. So if you got that plug-in one, this base plate is not going to be compatible, but the good news is there's other base plates available that will work with a plug-in style hybrid. This is the way your Escape can look whenever you're not flat towing behind your motorhome, and I think that's important because you're not always going to be behind your RV towing your vehicle. And when it comes to the appearance, I think this is probably one of the better looking base plates out there. Everything kind of lives within this opening already, and it's matte black in color, so it kind of matches the plastic and does a decent job of actually blending in. Compared to some of the other ones, at least visually speaking, like I said, I think this is one of the better looking ones. There's a Roadmaster one that is similar, but with that, the openings on the base plate come way out here, and so you have to drill out openings. They're kind of hard to line up like that sometimes. So with this, a little less modification involved, and everything's easy to get to. I do like the fact too that the base plate is going to have brackets already attached to it. So that's going to make, setting up your wiring connector much easier. You don't have to worry about making anything, as well as bolting up the breakaway switch. There's a tab already on the base plate, gives you a really good spot and really convenient. Whenever you are ready to use the base plate, it's going to be pretty simple. You'll have these caps that you can pull out, which I think is a nice touch, keeps dirt and junk from getting in there. And then you have your removable arms, and with these, you put them in, rotate it about a quarter turn, and it'll lock into place there. And it'll be set up the same over here on the other side. Now we're going to have that attachment point we need for our tow bar. The arms are just the holes in it are going to line up the holes there. Put the pin through. Of course, you want to set up your other components. On the base plate, the safety chain openings, even though they're a little further back, still manageable to get to pretty easily. And that's really all there is to it. So with this base plate, it's going to be compatible with most Blue Ox tow bars, and as well as some of the others. A lot of the manufacturers are changing their ends up now to pair everything up. So for example, we have a Roadmaster Nighthawk tow bar with Blue Ox ends, and goes together perfectly. And let's say if you already happen to have a different brand of tow bar, but you're wanting to use this base plate and hold on to that tow bar, chances are pretty good you can make it work. And that's because there's tons of different ends available that you could swap out and allow you to pair everything up together. Other than that, at the end of the day, good all-around base plate. If I was setting up my own Escape to be flat-towed, this would be the one that I would use. I really just like the appearance of it, to be honest with you. It does a better job of blending in, at least in my opinion. As far as the installation goes, definitely time-consuming. I'd say it falls somewhere in the middle of the difficulty level. I've done some base plates that are easier, done some that are much more difficult. This one was right there in the middle. So take your time, stay focused. You should be in pretty good shape. But with that said, why don't we go ahead, pull into the garage and get started on it now. To begin our installation, we're gonna be here at the front of our Escape, and you can go ahead and pop your hood, and we need to get the fascia removed. So up top here, we're gonna have 4 fasteners that we can get removed. They're all gonna look like this, and we'll have 2 on each side. And I'm using a 10mm size socket to get them out. And from this point on, whatever we do to one side of the vehicle, we'll also do to the other side, because it'll be set up the same way. You can move to your wheel wells now, and it helps if you turn your tires in one way or the other. It gives you some more space. But along the whole edge here, there's going to be several pushpin style fasteners that we can pull out. So they'll be just like this. And with these, you can take a trim tool or even a flathead screwdriver. You'll pry underneath the head of it, and you're able to pop that whole base out. So we'll just work our way down until we get all of them out. There's this trim piece here. That essentially just kind of unsnaps. We'll bring it up to about there. And then if you peel back this felt liner, that will give us access to a couple of bolts inside this edge here. There's going to be 2 10mm head bolts, and they're kind of buried up in here, so bear with us, but the head of the bolt's actually going to be on the bottom. We can grab our socket here. Get them pulled out. So that's what the bolt will look like. The other one's kind of tucked up closer to the front. Just over here on the passenger side, you're gonna have this electrical connector, and I just kind of popped it off. There's this piece here that, you know, kind of just snaps in. Well, easier to work with and see. So we'll disconnect this so you can push down on this tab here, and while you're doing that, pull on that gray lever. And then we should be able to pull the connector apart here. Moving underneath the front now, on each side of our vehicle, we're going to have a total of 5 T30 torque spit fasteners, and kind of just throughout here. We'll come in with our driver and get them removed. We'll get this underbody panel removed, and so along the front edge, you'll have a total of 4 7mm head screws, and then kind of just scattered throughout it, we'll have several more. So we'll just work our way all the way around here. Once all of those are out, should be able to kind of pull down on the front of it and then slide it forward. And we can drop it down and get it out of our way for now. We're able to get our fascia removed now, and what I've done is just put some painter's tape along where we're going to be working here. That way we don't accidentally scratch anything. And if you can have someone give you a hand with this part, it definitely makes it easier. So what you can do, inside of here, there will be a little plastic tab that runs upward, and you can push in on it, which is pretty much impossible to see from here. But I'm pushing in from the back side, and then kind of while you're pulling down, I'll push in on the other tab, on the other side of the tab rather, And this will essentially just kind of unsnap here. And so here's what I was pushing on. This piece that runs upward, you know, I'm coming in from the back, push that one in, then on the front, push that one in, and that's how it was separated. So do that, get the other side like that as well, and then we should be able to essentially just kind of pull our fascia off. Make sure we're not hooked up to anything, you know, electrical wise, we're all good. So we'll set this off to the side, out of the way. On the very bottom here, we're gonna have this beam that runs from one side to the other, and on each end of it, we're gonna have two 13mm head bolts. So I'll pull these out. I already got the other side removed. And this piece should come off. Still feels kind of tight. And it actually looks like we might have a couple more bolts right up in through here. One more bolt on each side. It's this one here. It's a 10mm. Once you get both of them out, it looks like you should just be able to pull kind of towards you to get this removed. We'll have this wire that runs down here at the very front, and there's a couple of push pins keeping it secure. You just take your trim tool or your flathead, and pry them out, and then you can just take your wire and kind of tuck that up and out of the way of the shutters here. On each side of our little air dam here, we're gonna have to trim a small portion out to make way for our base plate. It's kind of just brittle plastic. You can use a utility knife or a pair of snips. I find though it kind of just starts to fall apart. So I like to use a multi-tool just for a cleaner cut. So we'll get this removed. Over here on the driver's side, they want you to remove some of these fins. It's really just this one, but I found in the past, I usually do a little bit off here and back here, just to make it have more than enough room for our base plate. That way we're not trying to hold it up and having to take it down and trim more out and everything. So I'll just get that removed, again, using my multi-tool here. On the passenger side, pretty much the same deal, just the tabs are a little different. This, especially if you're using some type of tool that has a cutting disc, be careful because it looks like some wiring's right behind here. You don't want to punch through and damage it, but we'll get this out of our way too. I have this black box, and I'm going to first kind of pop that wiring off from it, like that. And then we're gonna have this bolt, or I'm sorry, that nut right there, and a 10mm. We'll remove it, and then there's gonna be two more, just kind of give you an idea, right in here. Just on the back side of this bar though, there's gonna be two more nuts that we can remove as well. On that back side, this is what I was talking about. One of the bolts will be right here. So that's the location of it. And the other one is essentially just right below it, maybe 5 or 6 inches. It's a little tricky to see because I actually use the fastener for an area to kind of push the wiring to it. So you will have to pry that off first, and then that'll expose the fastener there. Push this towards the back of the car and just let it hang for now, and that way we'll have a little bit of extra clearance when we go to set up our base plate. If you happen to install a braking system like we are, now would be a great time to take the breakaway switch that comes with a lot of these supplemental braking systems and attach it to the base plate. It's just a lot easier to get to and do it while it's off of the vehicle. With this bar that runs across, our base plate will sit on top of it. And so I reinstalled it just by putting the 2 bottom bolts back in, the 2 10s. Get that sorted. And what I think I'm going to do as well is take this wiring fastener here and unsnap that. That way we can kind of manipulate it a little bit better and get it out of the way when our base plate slides in. If you can have someone help you out with this part, definitely makes it easier. You're going to take the bolts that were originally holding this in and put red Loctite on the threads, which doesn't come included, but you can grab it here at eTrailer. And all the fasteners that we use to secure the base plate's going to get some of this. This is going to slide into position. Try to get everything lined up. And we're going to take those bolts and get them started hand tight here. Just a quick pointer, it's not all that uncommon if one of your bolts don't quite line up perfectly, you know, if there's a lot of stuff to kind of get in your way. So if that happens, you can always take some type of pry bar or something and just try to work it into shape, see if that helps, or if anything, you can kind of hold it there. And snug this bolt up. If I manage to grab the right size socket, but you get the idea, if you snug this up, it should keep it in place a little bit better, make it easier to get these bolts started. Once all of them are in place and hand tight, come back and snug them down. And then we can change out for a torque wrench and tighten down the bolts to the amount specified in the instructions. Just as a reference, we did switch over here to the passenger side, just because without that computer box here, it's much easier to see what we're doing, but other side's set up exactly the same. With that said, on our base plate, you'll have a couple of holes in it. The one here at the bottom, it's a little bit smaller of a hole. We're going to use that as a guide. Take a 3/8 drill bit and drill through just this first layer of steel here. And something that I like to do as well, this top hole, because a bolt will go through there, and sometimes, so this is lining up with an existing hole in the frame. Sometimes it's not perfect, it can kind of fight you. If you want, you can take a grinder bit or even just a 1/2-inch drill bit and just run it through. Make sure there's not a little piece of metal hanging down there that's going to hold you up. This little piece that kind of ramps up here, I'm going to take a pair of pliers or something and bend it. Something like that. That way this hole is now bigger and it'll be easier to get our hardware up in through here. This is what our hardware is going to consist of. We're going to have this handle nut. All right. Top hole will be 1/2 inch, so you can take this bolt and a split lock washer. And what I like to do before I even bother to put this in, just run this in by hand. Make sure it goes nice and smooth. A lot easier to kind of break any rust or anything loose that may be inside of this now as opposed to while we're holding it up. And then same deal on the bottom. It's just the smaller bolt. I believe it's a 3/8. Put your split lock washer on it. The way this is going to work here, this handle nut will go in through this opening and line up with the holes. So you might have to kind of put a bend in it and manipulate it a little bit. It'll line up like that. And then don't forget your Loctite. Get one of them hand tight here. I like to get just a few threads going on it. That way you can still kind of maneuver this one around. We'll We'll snug up the top bolt using a 3/4 inch socket. We'll change out to a 9/16 for the bottom one. And once those are snug, come back with our torque wrench and tighten them all the way down. You'll have this remaining handle nut. Sometimes you can just work it back and forth to break it off. Other times, not so much. And this is one of them. So I'm just going to come in with a sharp pair of snips here. Cut that off. Push it out of our way. And this tab too, I guess I'll bend back as well. We secured our computer box here. The opposite way that we removed it. It is kind of tight, but it's doable. Push all the plastic fasteners back in, and then you can also install your safety cables, which these essentially just wrap around the frame, and you use the D-links to connect them through the hole in the base plate there. And I try to keep everything as tight as possible. That way we don't run into issues with our bumper hitting when we go to put it back on, or fascia rather. And then I take zip ties too, kind of tie this up from spot to spot, just to help keep it secure and prevent it from rattling around whenever we're driving down the road. It'd be a great time to install some of your other flat towing components, like your diode wiring or your supplemental braking system. And I say that because with the fascia off, just got a lot more room to work. It's much more manageable. So that's exactly what I'm gonna do. If you already have those parts on or not gonna be doing them, you are gonna have to trim a little bit of the fascia for it to go back on and have everything clear. So once I get these other parts on, we'll come back and go over how to trim it and get it put back in place. So there's a few things we need to do. One of them, on the back side of it, we're gonna have this ambient air temp sensor, and we'll have to relocate that. So with this, just use your trim tool or your flathead, pry that off. There's this little piece here too. And I'm just gonna kind of tuck this out of the way for now. We'll worry about re-securing it later. But there's some areas that we're gonna have to trim to clear the base plate. And there's a diagram in the instructions. It tells you where to go. And with this, you just have to be careful because we see this plastic piece, right? Well, below this stuff is the actual bottom of the fascia. So be careful, you just don't want to cut right down on through here and end up cutting through the bottom of your fascia. So just keep that in mind. You can use a Dremel tool, might work pretty good for this. Your multi-tool, whatever you got to get this done. The back of the fascia is all trimmed, and this is how it turned out. And I will generally cut a little bit more material out than what they say. That way we're just not trying to fight it over a small piece of plastic in our way. So that's all cut out. And then if we go right up, this is that air temperature sensor. And so what I did was just kind of run it along through here and then just zip tied it to this piece of wire loom. We're gonna have to trim a little bit of the front of our fascia as well. This would be the passenger side. You can cut out the center sections here, and I'm just using kind of a pair of snips like this. Use a real clean cut, but other types of tools will work as well. Get these trimmed, and then as far as the driver side, if you're going to be installing a breakaway switch, which you probably are if you have a supplemental braking system, they say this whole deal needs to come out. So we'll cut that, these pieces, and this one. And honestly, once we get this in place, I'll see how it looks. I might end up just cutting the center portion out as well over here, at least that way it'll all match, but we should be good to get this in position now. Get someone to help out here and reinstall our fascia the opposite way that we removed it. Everything went together fine. As far as the trimming goes, I really didn't have to do anything extra, with one exception, and your setup might be just a little bit different. But over here, this piece where I had cut it originally, it's pretty tight. So when you go to cut this, do your best to try to almost get it flush with this side piece here. But other than that, everything went back together as it should. And that'll finish up our look at and our installation of the Blue Ox baseplate kit with removable arms on our 2021 Ford Escape.